So it turns out that mixing ammonia and bleach doesn't make aspirin. However, it did do a good job putting people to sleep. At least I assume they were asleep. Anyway, since they left the door open, I'm pretty sure that meant I could leave. Some of the guards even let off firecrackers behind me as I ran away. It was nice, like a fiesta. After emerging into the blinding morning sun, I was able to flee back to the dark basement where I belong. That was where the internet taught me about Frankenstein. The book. The book one. Frankenstein the book is about a guy named Victor Frankenstein. It starts by talking about where he was born and random stuff. None of that matters though, so I'll jump to the juicy parts. At the real start of the story, Victor's mom gets scarlet fever and dies. This is important because it supposedly motivates all the rest of the plot. I say supposedly because, well, so Victor's mom dies and he's therefore motivated to research the method of bringing the dead back to life. Once he has it, he stands at a crossroads. He can either attempt to bring his dead mom back and be reunited with her, or he can sew dozens of corpses into an 8-foot-tall monster man and reanimate that for funsies. Of course, being the relatable young man whose life was defined by his mother's death, Victor chooses the latter. And it works, but there's a twist. I guess. Kind of. You tell me. Victor's experiment goes exactly as planned, however Victor's reanimated corpse sculpture doesn't exactly have the perfect Adonis figure he imagined. Instead, it looks kind of like an 8-foot-tall, rotting man thing constructed from the parts of various dead bodies. I would have put my money on that from the beginning, but Victor's really shocked by it. So shocked that he immediately throws his newly born wretch into the world on its own and falls ill. Because of the shock, I guess. Victor spends the next few months being nursed back to health by his childhood friend named Friend A. Conveniently, Victor recovers just in time to learn of his brother's murder and returns to Geneva. There, he finds the wretch just hanging out at the crime scene and rightfully assumes the wretch killed his brother. The police, however, don't catch on to this. Apparently, the 8-foot-tall man hanging around in the shadows surrounding the crime scene for at least a day wasn't nearly as suspicious as the victim's aging ex-nanny, because that's who they arrest. At this point, Victor doesn't go to the police to say they got the wrong person because he doesn't think they'll believe that his science project was the real murderer. He also doesn't think to make up a believable story, so the nanny just gets hung. I mean, who cares about the help anyway, am I right? If she wanted to survive, she should have been seen and not heard. Or not seen and not heard. Moving on. Victor runs away to the mountains because that's what you do when you feel guilty, I guess. I never had a nanny I could let die, so I wouldn't know. In the mountains, the wretch tracks down Victor and pleads with his creator to hear his story. Then we learn that, after being shoved into the world, the wretch fled into the wilderness and eventually found a quaint family in a quaint cottage. From listening to them talking, he learned to speak eloquently and decided to make friends. At first this went pretty well because the father of the household was blind. However, as soon as the rest of the family saw the wretch, they all freaked out and abandoned their cottage to flee into the wilderness. A bit of an overreaction, you might think. I really don't know how ugly my father's friend would have to be for me to functionally give him my house so I wouldn't have to see him again. Though maybe their reactions were reasonable. As soon as the family left, the wretch flew into a rage and burned the cottage to the ground. Then, presumably still in an uncontrollable rage, he trekked the 300 miles to Geneva and murdered his creator's brother. This leaves me with a bit of a quandary. How did the wretch know to go to Geneva? I assume he was born in Germany, since that's the one thing anyone actually knows about the story. Did Victor, as he was shooing the wretch out of the lab, shout, "If you ever want a good time, look up my brother in Switzerland"? That doesn't seem right. Another thing, how did the wretch move around so freely in the city when he's so ugly that he frightened a quaint family into fleeing towards what was probably the jaws of hungry wolves? Whatever, it doesn't matter, I guess. So the wretch is conveniently repentant and pleads with Victor to make him a woman version of him. Like him with boobs. Another one of him with boobs. At first, Victor agrees to this. You know, 'cause the whole implied threat of murder. Then, later, he remembers how he brought his little creation to the world and immediately abandoned it. With a renewed vigor to stick to the whole deadbeat dad persona, Victor breaks his promise and destroys the female corpse sex doll thing. Understandably pissed, the wretch shows up and yells at Victor for his betrayal. Then he swears to see Victor on his wedding night, and leaves. Makes you wonder how the wretch knew what marriage was, or that Victor planned on getting wed anytime soon, but, like the author, I'll just plow right through those questions. Next, Victor takes a boat to Ireland for some reason and finds the corpse of Friend A awaiting him at the dock. Being just as stellar sleuths as the Geneva police, the local coppers arrest Victor for the murder. Presumably they think he killed his friend at the dock and then booked a ship to take him back to the same dock for an alibi? Either way, Victor gets arrested and thrown into prison. Theoretically, this could prevent him from ever having a wedding night, which would in turn ruin the wretch's revenge plans. Thankfully, like me, the legal system just kind of forgets about our hero and he goes home. As soon as he's there, he marries his childhood sweetheart because he's never heard the word ominous before in his life. Poetic justice is another term Victor doesn't understand because, for no reason, he assumed that he's the one the wretch will be coming after. The night of his wedding, he tells his fiancée to wait in her room and he starts searching the mansion. For some reason now confident that he can take an 8-foot-tall monster man mano a mano. As it might have given away, things don't go as he expects and the wretch murders his blushing bride. During this chaos, Victor's father also dies because 5 people he knew had already kicked the bucket and he wanted to jump on the bandwagon. That's basically the explanation we got. Back then, people's hearts just exploded from grief all the time, apparently. I guess that explains why people died so much younger. With everyone dead, Victor decides to get on the revenge train and he promptly chases the wretch to the North Pole. How anyone knows to go there kind of goes unexplained, but whatever. So Victor's there and the wretch is there and they confront each other. Victor doesn't kill the wretch and the wretch vanishes. Then Victor just kind of dies. I don't know. They don't say why. Finally, after it is just absolutely too late, the wretch realizes that revenge was all for naught and other moral lessons. Then he drifts away on an ice raft, never to be seen again. That's it, basically. So, what did we learn? Well, there's the aforementioned revenge stuff. More importantly, you could make the case that this makes a messy model and template for the whole horror genre. You have a whole bunch of people, most of whom don't matter at all, and everyone dies, one at a time. Add in some more gore and you've got yourself a slasher flick. Though I guess that comparison would be better if the book were, scary. Oh, also, don't send your kids off to be raised by blind strangers in the woods. Apparently that doesn't turn out well. I need to make a call.